So this is the brand new iPad Air, the one with the infamous M1 chip, and I've been using this. Some are referring to this as possibly the iPad Pro killer. I wouldn't go that far, but what I would say is this is possibly the best value iPad that you can buy this year. Let me explain. On the outside, the 5th gen or 2022 iPad Air looks identical to last year's model, with that industrial design that's incredibly light in the hand. The Touch ID that's incorporated into the power button is useful, and that stunning 10.9-inch Liquid Retina display that still looks really nice with media like HDR content and games. It's no ProMotion display, but it is still very nice. Now, it's the iPad Air that we've come to love. This year, Apple have included this new blue color that's a subtle but nice change, and they've also included a matching smart folio in marine blue that complements it really nicely. Okay, so on this year's iPad Air, it's less about what's going on the outside and more to do with what Apple have done differently on the inside, because we find that much loved, much respected M1 chip, which we saw introduced in the Mac Pro, the MacBook, the iPad Pro, now make its way to essentially a mid-range iPad, which is absolutely incredible because you still get that 8-core CPU, the 8-core GPU, the 16-core neural engine in this slim form factor at this price point. There's very little out there in terms of matching both the power, performance, and the efficiency of the M1 chip. So in terms of day-to-day performance, I've been incredibly impressed with the iPad Air. I've done gaming all the way from Asphalt 9 through to Call of Duty through to Vectorwork, and then chopping up movies 4K 60 frames per second on iMovie. The iPad Air has held up incredibly well, almost as good as my M1 powered iPad Pro. And that leaves us with a very genuine question: why should you pay extra to upgrade to the M1 powered iPad Pro? Well, there are still some advantages, and those are really to do with the fact that you get a larger display option with the iPad Pro. That matters to people like me that prefer that larger display. The ProMotion display is certainly still a standout feature, and again, that might matter to some. And then you get better speakers, and you also get more RAM on the iPad Pro, which for certain activities, you will notice a difference if you were to put them side by side. But having said all of that, given the efficiency of iPadOS 15, yeah, I mean, it's a very genuine question. Why should you pay more when you get pretty much close to performance on the iPad Air with the M1 chip as you do with the iPad Pro with the M1 chip? That's less of a disadvantage for the iPad Pro and more of an advantage for just how much you're getting at this price point with the iPad Air. This year's iPad Air includes an updated 12 megapixel rear camera with an f1.8 aperture. So photos come out nicely at 1x, as you can see here, but at 2x you'll notice the over processing, though the ultra wide camera on the front is a little more fun. Okay, this is another big update for the iPad Air, and that is the addition of the 12 megapixel ultra wide camera on the front. The benefit of that is something called center stage. So this is really useful in, video apps like FaceTime or this Zoom. Center stage will essentially follow you around. There's also the other benefit that if you have multiple people in the shot, then it will try and get all of you in there. Very, very useful. I've been using this for a while on the iPad Pro, and if you have the habit like me of not being able to stay still or in one place, this will follow you around, and it makes it really, really cool to use. Right, if any of you guys use your iPads to film video, I'm not sure anybody does, but in case you do, this is an example of what it will look like. Currently being filmed in 4K 30 frames, although this will shoot in 4K up to 60 frames. How's that for stabilization, quality, and also audio? Let me know. This year's iPad Air gets Wi-Fi 6, 5G, and Bluetooth 5. You're also getting kind of reasonable battery life, so Apple are claiming around 10 hours of web or watching video on Wi-Fi only, though I was getting around 5 hours of doing much more than that. Bear in mind, I was testing this out, whole range of really graphic intensive apps and gaming, and as with the case on my M1 iPad Pro, the battery life is okay-ish, though it could be improved. Okay, up to this point, it's been mostly positive, but I want to talk about some negatives. To begin with, this is less to do with the iPad Air than it is to do with Apple and iPadOS. We're currently on iPadOS 15. I can't help but with all that hardware that you get with the M1 chip, and this was true when the M1 iPad Pro was announced, iPadOS 15 just doesn't allow you to take full advantage of it. And for most users, I think this is going to be fine because they don't necessarily use an iPad in the way that they would do, like some of us do, planning on using it like a computer. But if you are, then you will see some of the limitations currently in iPadOS 15. Hopefully with WWDC around the corner, we might see some updates to iPadOS 15 to make it more like a computer-like experience. And finally, Apple, we are in 2022. Please, there is no reason to give us 64 GB as a starting capacity. Most people that buy this device will use it for a number of years. So drop 64 GB and give us 128 GBs, please. I started this video by saying that some people refer to this as an iPad Pro killer. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I certainly feel that this is the best value proposition if you are looking at an iPad. Everything from the form factor to the now new M1 chip incorporated. The iPad Air in 2022 is leaps and bounds ahead of the competition. But let me know your thoughts, and if you've enjoyed this video, you're gonna love, absolutely love, this other Apple video here. I'll see you over there next. Peace and blessings.